Welcome aboard, everybody. Happy Thursday. As you see by the motif around me and Mr. Prohaska there, it is time to talk all things Buffalo Bills. So we will do that with the guy who has a phenomenal email that relates to both the Bills and the Sabres that I found out a few weeks ago. It's pretty cool. So anyway, Anthony from Cover One, who breaks down the Bills with us each and every week. How are you, sir? Happy Thursday.
I'm good. Happy Thursday to you. Thank you for the shout out for my very unique email there. And yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
I didn't want to give the email because people might start emailing you out of the blue.
Appreciate that.
You do. You have a very unique, cool email. I was like, what is? And then I realized afterwards, once you told me the explanation, I was like, of course, that makes a lot of sense. I like people that have creative emails. And get you thinking, what does that mean? What is that all about?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a sucker for a good like username or email or something that, especially if you don't know, and it's like, hey, can I ask you, like, what does that mean? And they're like, oh yeah, it's actually, I'm alluding to this, or it means this. And I'm like, oh, that's really clever. Like, I didn't know, like, and then you can kind of connect the dots and breadcrumbs. Yeah, I do remember when I said it to you and you responded something of like, okay, what does that mean? Like, why is it called that? Or something of like, that's an interesting email. And I was like,
I said, intriguing email. I'm not going to ask what it means. I just would rather be left in the dark, And then you came back and told me what it meant. And I was like, oh, damn it, he spoiled it for me. Now I get it. Then I understood it. I was like, of course. Why didn't I think of that? Right? Makes a lot of sense. All right, let's talk all things Buffalo Bills. And one of your favorite topics I think we're going to talk about today. That is your defensive coordinator, Jim Leonhard, who got in front of the podium and has been yapping a bit and talking about his defense and talking about the way he's going to utilize some guys. So I want to talk to you a bit in the front of today's interview about Jim Leonhard's vision for the Buffalo Bills, because I do have my doubts about this change at head coach, and I will remain stout in my viewpoint that I think they should not have let Sean McDermott go. But we'll see what Joe Brady does. I'm willing to give the guy a chance, but I'm not incredibly optimistic, and I'm waiting to say, I told you so. But I won't go there, all right, because I want to root against the Bills, all right? But a guy that I am very excited about, and I know you are too, is the fact that they were able to go out and get Jim Leonhard to come in and be their defensive coordinator, and that he could perhaps change kind of the feel of this Buffalo Bills defense compared to the way that Sean McDermott, as the head coach and kind of the head of the defense, even though he had a coordinator, the head of the defense kind of guy, defensive-minded coach, handled it. So I think it will be intriguing and interesting. So let's talk about what Jim Leonhard said, and let's start with one of the big things, and he's one of the biggest guys, and that's Ed Oliver. He seems to have very, very big ideas for Ed Oliver. Let's start there.
Yeah, he mentioned some pieces in, actually, and shout out to the Buffalo media for asking a lot of the more technical questions and less just, football speak and generalities. It was more like, alignments and these things and, positional relativity and all that stuff. And in speaking about that, Ed Oliver was somebody who came up, and Leonhard talked about, finding ways to get Ed Oliver matched up one-on-one and, using, I'm paraphrasing, but, giving him more freedom, he said. And that's an intriguing part of this defense. Just overall, the attack-minded nature, the, play on the front foot type of identity and philosophy that Jim Leonhard's going to bring. But baked into that is his ability to scheme up matchups and create a front that's going to allow this person to have a one-on-one, this person to have a one-on-one, or force the offense into a disadvantageous matchup, make them slide a certain way to create something on the backside, or even, a game on the front side that isolates this person. And sometimes, again, it doesn't even have to be as technical as that. It can just be, we're going to align this way, which is going to make this guard have to block Ed Oliver one-on-one. And we think that matchup, is advantageous to Ed Oliver. And here we go. And, Ed Oliver seems excited. Hopefully he's healthy this year. He's had couple surgeries, I believe, that throughout the offseason and tying back into last season. But yeah, it was nice to hear Leonhard mention him specifically and tie in the idea of giving him some more freedom, speaking about Leonhard and, getting the opportunity to put him in some one-on-ones and let him win.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Another guy he talked about, Bradley Chubb. I mean, this is a guy that the Bills went out and got during the offseason. What kind of impact do you think Chubb will have in this Jim Leonhard defense?
I hope a good one. I think for Chubb, he gives them somebody who is a true 3-down player, fits the defense well. They brought Bosa in last year. You're exchanging Bosa for Chubb. Bosa, before he got hurt, was legitimately by metrics and even on tape, like he was producing like a top 10 edge in football last year, like pressure rate, win rate, pass rush productivity, pressure sacks, all these things, right? He was a true impact player. And then he broke his hand, more injuries on top of that. And then even when he was at his healthiest, there were still some questions with run defense. Chubb, I think, boosts the run defense nature. So now you have one bookend is Bradley Chubb. The other bookend is Greg Rousseau. You are very solid on the edges in terms of your run defense, which is a very good thing. Keep things constricted, allow, your guys on the inside or focus more on movement on the interior because you've got two strong run defenders on the outside. And Chubb ties into that, obviously, so he can play the early downs, but then he also gives you some power and some compression on third downs as well. He still can rush the passer. Despite being a power and compression guy, I do think he has some athleticism to his game. And I also think TJ Parker, the edge, their first pick in this draft, the edge they took at the top of the second round, I think he's almost like I don't want to say a baby Bradley Chubb, but like he's in that Chubb kind of mold in terms of play style and skill set. So I also think Chubb has the opportunity to have a positive impact on TJ Parker. It's always good to have vets in the room who can give you advice and help you develop, but it's even better if that vet plays the same way that you play, right? Having Von Miller in the room is great, but it's also like, dude, I can't bend like you bend. I don't have the get off that you have and all these things. Right. It's nice to have, Chubb has a similar skill set. Maybe he can tap in a little more to Parker as well. But worst case on the surface, he gives you a true 3-down player, a guy who can impact early downs and some pass rush situations, does the dirty stuff, isn't the sexiest player, but I think gives you a pretty high floor at the edge position, gives you a known quantity, and somebody that can be, a top 2 edge for you for the majority or all of the season.
Now, one of the interesting things I was hearing out of their OTAs was we know the Bills during the offseason went out and got defensive back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They expect him to be an impact guy. He's apparently a guy that is providing a lot of leadership. He makes a lot of noise. He's very chirpy. He's a talker, communicator, so to speak. Again, let's talk about Gardner-Johnson and what his role will be in this defense.
Yeah, I think, to start with that, I do think he brings a different kind of edge and tenacity from like an energy and a juice perspective. And I know the rep the Bills defense kind of gets amongst the Bills fan base and even those outside of it in terms of it. Like, I think people think that the Bills defense has been soft over the years or hasn't been like violent or hasn't been tenacious. And I disagree with that. But Chauncey Gardner-Johnson just takes that to it. He's just a different type of dude. Like, it's just a different type of level. He is sandpaper and grit and tenacity and violence, and he will chirp you and let you know about it. He's trying to get under your skin. He is that like playoff hockey guy that is on the penalty kill and playing against your top line, and he's putting everybody into the boards every chance he gets, and he is going after you. He will take risks. He plays violent. He chirps. He's doing everything with edge and tenacity and grit and sandpaper to a level that not a lot of teams or players have in the league. And I think that adds something to the defense, right? And that also comes with some risk, as we've seen, right? Because when it's going good, it's great. But if it's not going good, there's a reason why he's been at multiple stops, and some of them are shorter than others, and some of them he's not welcomed back. So it can rub people the wrong way and not work out. So I think he brings that from a personality perspective and just an energy perspective. And then on the field, I think he gives them really good interchangeability with Cole Bishop. If we're looking at them as the starting safeties, Chauncey can play in the box. He can play as a nickel, that apex type of role in certain matchups. He's a good blitzer. He's got no problem coming downhill. He will fit the run every day of the week. But I also think he gives them that single high safety patroller that allows Cole Bishop to play more around the line of scrimmage, in and around the box. I think Cole Bishop is at his best coming downhill, playing forward, but in and around the box as much as possible. Cole Bishop at his best, going back to his tape at Utah, was being more of a big nickel monster man in the slot, off ball. Even if he's playing from depth, he's spinning down as more of that robber safety. He's made improvements as like playing deeper in terms of 2 high looks and single high looks, but he's still at his best in and around the box. And Chauncey can do some of that Cole Bishop stuff, but he also can play from depth in 2 high and single high looks. He's got the range. He can read quarterbacks and route distributions. So I think he gives them somebody overall that adds sandpaper and grit and tenacity, but then on the field, interchangeability with Cole Bishop, and can play a role that allows Cole Bishop to lean more into his strengths, more into, his toolbox and his skill set.
What in general do you think will look or feel different about the Jim Leonhard defense versus what was put out there under Sean McDermott? Like, I know we've talked about the schematics, we've talked about but when you watch the Bills, you say, "Oh yeah, that's a Jim Leonhard team." No, that's not a Sean McDermott team out there. Is there a characteristic? Is there something that we should expect to see?
I think there's going to be several little things and then bigger things overall holistic. We'll start with the little things. So you're going to get more single high coverages. You're going to get more man coverage. You're going to get more match coverage. You're obviously going to get more odd front base defense looks, right? I also think you're going to get more blitzing. I think you're going to get more movement. And I think you're going to get more blitzing and movement, both in terms of, against the run and against the pass. You're going to get run blitzes and run stunts. You're going to get pass blitzes and pass stunts. You're going to get simulated pressures and creepers. So you're going to see guys moving. And that's a big one too, versus Sean McDermott's defense, which was, one gap, penetrating, guys at the second level more often than not. The ball is snapped and they're on their feet, reading, seeing what's going on. Leonard's defense is going to be more on the snap. This guy's going here, that guy's going here, gap exchanges, scraping, moving, all this type of stuff. And then I think, those are a lot of the little detail things that you'll see regularly, but then that funneling into the bigger picture, I think the bigger picture is kind of seeing a different defense almost every week. Big philosophical element for Jim Leonhard that we've talked about here on the show is him wanting to dictate to offenses. He philosophically believes playing on the front foot, a quote that I've talked about any and every show that I've been on talking about Jim Leonhard, going back to his coaching clinics, like his exact words are, he never wants to be a counterpuncher. He wants an offense to get off the field on third down and have to go to their tablets and be like, all right, what are we seeing out there? Like, what are they spinning to? Like, what's going on? He wants an offense to have to be reactive. He knows the nature of the game. The game is skewed towards offenses. He wants offenses to not feel in control. He wants them to have to adjust. He wants them to have to counterpunch versus, what he's doing and setting the tone and setting the table with jabs and hooks and haymakers and all that. And in doing that, you have to be flexible. You have to be multiple. He has a core set of principles and foundations that the defense is made out of, but each week he kind of strips everything down to the bare bones and then builds from there based on the opponent. So he is very much a matchup-based defensive coordinator and defensive mind, which is what I love about him so much, because come playoff time, you need to be more matchup-based. You can't just do a lot of what the Bills have done, which is like, hey, we know who we are and we're going to keep doing that. And it's like, yeah, but the offenses know that. You have to throw a little more wrinkles, a little more change-ups. Jim Leonhard, one week he might be all changeups. The next week he might be all fastballs. The next week he might mix in both. The next week he might add a new pitch. So I think it's a lot of multiplicity, a lot of variability, different looks from week to week, all tied into those core fundamental packages of coverage, front movement, and playing on the front foot overall.
It's the Match Out Show with Boyd Green Digital at MC Show Digital. Right there's our YouTube link. Please like our video. We appreciate that. Give us a little thumbs up as you come in the room. And then also, please, if you're not already, please be a subscriber. Go to youtube.com/at MC Show Digital. You see it right there on your screen. Click the subscribe button. It's absolutely free. You support our channel. It helps get us out to many, many more. We're closing in, Anthony, on 1,000 subscribers. We're hoping to get there before our year anniversary. So it's been a nice, slow, steady growth. Appreciate every single one of you out there who has taken the time to hit that subscribe button. And memberships available as well. For you more dedicated subscribers, you can join in on the membership front. Today's video is presented by our friends at Northeast Roofing Professionals. And the video itself brought to you by our friends at Sharky's, who has an interesting cover band coming up. Anthony, let's hear a little bit from our friends at Sharky's, and then we're back. More Buffalo Bills talk right after this.
Welcome to the Hotel California. See Hotel California, the original Eagles tribute band, live at the Sharky's Event Center, June 5th, under the Burritt Motors Pavilion on the Jim Beam stage. Get tickets at SyracuseTix.com.
If you plan on throwing a party, whether it's a wedding, clam bake, birthday party, graduation party, a party, company picnic, oh, and did I mention clam bake? Sharky's is your party headquarters with 3 indoor options and a plethora of outdoor options as well. All in a park-like setting with a big stage and over 7,000 square feet of covered pavilion. So rain or shine, we've got you covered. Book your next party now. Go to sharkiesbanquets.com. Sharky's in Liverpool, making parties historic every single year.
A little Eagles cover band coming to Sharky's, the outdoor and indoor pavilion. Open now. Beautiful concert venue there at Sharky's, right on Route 57 in Liverpool, and a list of shows. We'll keep you abreast. I'll see if I can get a list of the shows coming up. We could put it along our scrolling ticker for people that want to go out and see some live music. They get some really, really great acts. They have a really nice setup there. For bands, and they get some pretty prominent acts, so that should be a fun one. I like the Eagles. I was
gonna say that cover band was good. They sounded really good. My mom grew up in that era, so I've known about the Eagles since I was like 2 and 3 and listened to that music. And Don Henley and the whole crew, and I mean, Hotel California is like one of the best songs ever. And that sounded good. I was like, this is a good cover. Like, they're hitting it pretty good. And that's also a good name for an Eagles cover band, just calling it Hotel California. So I was impressed from that.
When the song Desperado comes on, do you look off into the distance like the guy on Seinfeld? You know that Seinfeld reference?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Desperado. Elaine, I'm listening right now. Don't talk. Fantastic episode of Seinfeld.
Yeah, he gets so emotional.
The Desperado episode, fantastic. The guy works for the furniture company. All right, anyway, back to Bills. I know I'm getting silly, but it's awful fun. It's an awful fun episode. There's some really, really good things in that Seinfeld repertoire over those 9 seasons of Seinfeld. That's a good one. If you have never seen it, folks, go check it out. All right, let's go back and talk some more Bills. Let's move over to the offensive side of the ball, Anthony. I have some questions there. Before I get to that, let me ask about OTAs in general. Are you hearing anything about there being, dare I say, a different vibe here as the team now actually has some somewhat organized practices with Joe Brady as the head coach instead of Sean McDermott? Any vibe or any waft out there about a different vibe with a different head coach?
No, I think, there's some comments on like the different feel or style of Brady now that he is like the head coach and just terms of what he is overall. But no, I don't think too much from an offensive standpoint. Again, despite I think what a lot of frustrated Bills fans say and think and want, Sean McDermott wasn't this overhand like puppet master with Joe Brady in the offense. Like, Joe Brady was running the offense. It was his offense. I don't think there were many, if any, bumpers and restrictor plates on him where if he wanted to do X, Y, and Z, Sean McDermott was like, no, you got to do A, B, and C. Like, Brady ran this offense kind of how he wanted, and he still is running it how he wants now, and probably even more so because he is the head coach. So I think, his energy is still the same in terms of, being the guy that got him to this spot. So the way he engages with the players, the way he interacts with the players, I think now you're seeing it maybe more holistically top to bottom because he's interacting with the defense more and things. But I think who he is largely has not changed. And because he's had such a strong hand in the offense the past several years, I think overall the vibes and the energy on that side of the ball are relatively and largely the same as well.
All right, let's talk about pressure. I think there is some pressure on some of these Bills players through OTAs and inevitably into training camp. And then when the regular season starts, let's start with the guy they went out and got to hopefully fix the receiving core, and that's DJ Moore. Hearing some pretty good things in OTAs about DJ Moore. We know he's a pretty good player, but is he and can he ascend and be a number one on this Bills offense in terms of their wide receiving core? And what kind of pressure do you think is on this man?
I think there's a lot of pressure on him because to go into the last thing you said before asking about the pressure, he has to be the number one. He needs to be the number one. They gave up a 2nd-round pick for him and ate all of the money on that contract. So they're paying him significantly, and they also gave up draft capital to get him. And that is in and of itself significant. Added on top of the fact of, as we talked last year so much, all the questions around the receiving core, the limitations of the offense, going into this offseason, it was, they got to get a number one receiver. Is it in the draft? Here's all these draft prospects. Oh, AJ Brown might be available. Are they going to get AJ Brown? Are they going to sign Romeo Doubs? Like, there was all these other options, right, that they could have dipped into. and they put a good chunk of resources into the DJ Moore option and Bucket and grabbed him. So I do think there is pressure on him because there's so many eyes on him. And I think Bills fans have high expectations for him. I think most fans, if not, I would not even say if not, I think most fans are excited, think he can be a true number one in this offense. And more importantly, he needs to be. And if he's not, he's going to feel it here. He's going to hear it, I should say. And I think that's kind of the biggest question for this offense. One, I think it tied to that is, how healthy is Dalton Kincaid? Who's going to start at left guard? But other than that, the offense is relatively the same and unchanged. The biggest change is DJ Moore gets injected into the team. It should help all the receivers because it bumps, and all the pass catchers, bump them down a peg because of his, insertion there. And then the ascension piece that you mentioned, I think is interesting. I don't think DJ Moore is a true wide receiver one from like a skill set and build standpoint. I think he's more of like a high end two from a ceiling standpoint, which still can be fine. But I think his skill set pairs well with this offense. Him being able to add vertical stretch, horizontal stretch, the ability to generate yards after catch, the physicality that he can play with, the speed that he can play with, being able to play bigger at the catch point. I think he has the opportunity to produce at wide receiver one production, or at the very least, just alleviate a lot of the constriction that the Bills offense felt at times last year. And I think that's also tied into what makes week one really exciting, because they're going to play the Texans and he's going to get Derek Stingley and he's going to get Kamari Lassiter. And Derek Stingley is the second best corner in football. The only reason he's not number one is because Patrick Surtain II exists, and Kamari Lassiter is phenomenal. They're the best corner tandem in football. So we're going to get to find out right out the gate if he's ready to compete against the best of the best and what he can do for this offense against the best corner tandem in football and against the best defense in football.
Anthony, I thought months ago when Terry Pagula had that press conference, there wasn't any chance that Keon Coleman would be on the Bills roster, even through OTAs. He's here. And so the question I have for you about him, and maybe it's because he had no leverage anyway, but I mean, boy, when you take a guy out to the woodshed like that in a press conference and the owner is part of it, that doesn't usually bode well for the player hanging around. But Keon has hung around, and the Bills are proclaiming that he has turned over a new leaf. Are you buying what they're selling?
50-50. I'm not ready to buy into that fully until we see it continue throughout the regular season. Because at this stage last year, it was arguably the same, if not at the very least, like very, very similar, right, verbiage around Keon Coleman. And, Brandon Beane even talked about it a bit in those offseason pressers. Coleman came into camp last year, phenomenal shape, phenomenal mindset, was making plays. I noted it, during training camp and being there in person. He looked great and he was performing great. It was very much like, wow, like, look how we showed up in year two. This is exciting. And then we got into the regular season and the, unproductive habits kind of reared their ugly head, and the way he approached wasn't necessarily the same. And Brandon Beane, again, even talked about that. Like, it's about him, what does he need to do to, have a successful year? And Beane was like, he needs to show up in the offseason the same way he did last year, which was great, and then carry that through the regular season. So we've got the first part again, which is showed up great. Can he carry that through? I think what's nice is hearing Keon acknowledge, his lack of performance or production or mindset. He's always been a very transparent guy, just kind of, in the moment thoughts, he says them, which can be good and bad at times. But we got to see it carry through the season. We have to see that work ethic, that focus, that diligence. It has to stay with him through the offseason, which I think it will. And then when it comes time for the regular season, it has to stay as well. And that's the biggest question. So we won't know until we're into week 5, week 6, week 7. Is he consistent? Is he maintaining? Are we seeing that semblance of professionalism from him, from an off the field standpoint, and how that ties into the on field?
One last guy I want to ask you about on the offense, because we know so little about him other than what he did in college, and that's the 4th-round draft pick, Skylar Bell, the wide receiver out of UConn. A lot of people felt he had a really, really high ceiling. He's been at rookie camp already, now at OTAs, and some drops, some typical rookie kind of stuff is what I'm reading and what I'm hearing from those that cover the team every day. Give me your sense about what this young man potentially could be in his rookie season here for the Bills.
I thought Skylar Bell was a really good value pick at that spot. I had a 4th-round grade on him. He went in the 4th round, but he went at the end of the 4th, almost 5th. So I'll take that value all day. I wasn't as high on him as others. I didn't think he was the steal of the draft. I don't necessarily think he's a receiver that has this wide receiver one upside, but I think his skill set can be very useful in this offense. The run after catch, the movement ability, another guy that adds you vertical stretch and horizontal stretch because of his speed. I think he's, fine enough as a route runner. I don't think he's this craftsman type of route runner that some make him out to be. And despite the fact that he's good after the catch, a lot of it is mainly due to speed and angle creation. He doesn't really break a lot of tackles, which is like one of my biggest pet peeves. If he could break tackles, he'd be so much more effective. But I think he's somebody who, again, that skill set will play in this offense. And I think the drops are somewhat of a concern. He's a guy who had as many drops as touchdowns as he did in his career, which is, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was 24 each. So 24 drops, 24 touchdown catches. And the drops were fairly consistent across his career. I think it was like, 7 one year, 7 the next, 8 the next, or you kind of broke, or 7, 7, 5, some kind of breakdown that was pretty evenly dispersed. And we'll see what he can do. It'll be interesting to see also kind of where he shakes out in the depth chart, because I think Moore is the 1, Palmer is the 2, Shakir is your 3, but he's going to get a bunch of targets. And then it's like, okay, is Keon Coleman the 4? Is Skylar Bell the 4? Like, who kind of eats into those snaps? As much as it's not sexy, I think blocking will matter for Skylar Bell. Can he fit into some of the Tyrell Shavers role and like get near the formation and block on duo, or does Keon Coleman do that? I think it's really interesting to kind of see if he's wide receiver 5 or if he's wide receiver 4. I think there could be a battle between Coleman and Bell for those snaps. And it'll be really interesting to see where it goes.
All right. And last one, Anthony, off the beaten trail of the Bills, because we haven't talked about this since it happened. And I know you are a big fan. The fall of the Sabres in Game 7.
Man.
What's the town like these days? I mean, they had that 7th game in their own building. I certainly went into it with a lot of optimism that, wow, this could be the year for the Sabres. This could maybe be a Stanley Cup berth. Obviously didn't make it. I get a sense that Buffalo is still pleased, but are they? Or is there grave disappointment that they had a Game 7 in their own building and weren't able to finish the deal?
I think for the majority of the fan base, and I'm included in this, it's a lot of, proud and pride feelings, right? Like the goal this year was like, okay, they should be a team that can make the playoffs. And not only did they make the playoffs, they won their division, and then they went to the second round. So overall, when you sit back and you look at it, this was a very positive season. A lot of guys took steps forward. A lot of the young guys, Zach Benson is like a household name now across the league because of his playoff performance. But then you've got Helenius, you've got Noah Ostlund, who was very good and got hurt in the playoffs. They've also got another guy like Yuri Kulik, who didn't really play this year because of some blood clot stuff. He's a phenomenal young player. They have a very good young core up and coming. They got to make some decision on some current guys. What do they do with Alex Tuck? What do they do with Bo Byram? Sell some things at goalie. But overall, I think when you take a step back, this was a very positive season, and everybody's really happy with the Sabres and proud. Tied into that, though, there is disappointment, not because they lost, but because of how they lost. I got goosebumps thinking about it. They owned that Game 7. They should have won that Game 7. They got a goal disallowed in the third period that the referee kind of blew the whistle a little early on that loose puck that Malenstein put in that should have made it 3-2. Mm-hmm. They get the 2-on-1 break in overtime. Tage gets a little too cute and tries to toe drag and beat Dobish instead of just either shooting it or passing it to a wide open Zach Benson, who likely buries it and wins it. I think that's more of the frustration, is not that they lost. And I do think if they played Carolina, Carolina's a machine, so it would have been tough to beat Carolina in the Eastern Conference Finals. But I think the disappointment and like the fear of missing out kind of ties in, because they should have won that Game 7. They were all over Montreal. They get down 2-0. They tie it 2-2, but they were on the front foot. The ice was tilted the majority of that game. They were the better team. They should have won. They didn't. That's where the frustration. It was a very, I hate saying this. It was a very Buffalo loss, very Bills-esque, where like you're looking at this moment where it's like, these handful of things all went against us, and if you just flip the coin and give us one of them, we win and we advance. And so I think that it felt very Buffalo-y. It felt very painful. It felt like they kind of got the short end of the stick, and they did because they were the better team, and it should have been them in the Eastern Conference Finals. But once you get over the pain of that moment in the vacuum, when you take a step back, I mean, this team was a laughing stock for years, and they were a laughing stock in November, and then they went on a run, and they won their division. They were the number 2 seed if you're looking at it the old school way in the entire Eastern Conference. And there's a lot of hope and positivity for the future, but bitterness as well, because it should have been them instead of Montreal. Plus, Montreal was flopping everywhere and just playing all this garbage kind of crap brand hockey. Like, oh, yeah.
You much of an old-time boxing fan at all, Anthony?
Not
the days of Ali and Frazier and Foreman.
Yeah, so like that kind of, yeah, I know like the fights and everything then, and I'd watched those fights and seen them. And I grew up in the 90s a bit too, when boxing mattered. Like, I remember coming into school as a little kid and all the kids talking about Mike Tyson bit Evander Holyfield's ear off. Did you see that last night? Like, oh my God, this and that. So yeah, I do know like the lore and the old school nature of boxing.
The reason I ask is, as you know, we do a monthly raffle, and we just started up a new one, and I've been going through the archives of my basement where I have all these interesting items, and this month's raffle is an interesting one, and it's most of it's boxing related. It's a few different things. All right, so this is one of the pieces. All right, and it's an Ali standing over Sonny Liston metal poster. All right, it's made of like this, like a tin. All right, so this is permanent. This isn't going anywhere. So it's Ali Liston. You can see the date, obviously, and Muhammad Ali standing over Sonny Liston, who he knocked to the floor.
That's one of, I feel like that image is top 10, like easy top 10 sports image. Yes, top 10 sports images of all time. I feel like you could even show that to people who don't know sports or boxing, and most people would be like, oh yeah, that's Muhammad Ali. I feel like most people would even know, like, yeah, and that's Sonny Liston on the ground. That is an iconic image. That's sick.
That's pretty cool. So that's part of our giveaway. Along with this, what gave me the inspiration to give that a tin poster away, which I had hanging in the studio for years, was this book that I got. So I got this book. It's called My View from the Corner. All right. And you can see it there on the screen, but it's written by Angelo Dundee and the great Burt Sugar. Burt Randolph Sugar, the longtime boxing writer who hung around boxing forever, especially during that era, with a foreword, by the way, by Muhammad Ali. All right. And what is it? I mean, it's a book written by Dundee talking about what it was like to be in Muhammad Ali's corner and some of those inside stories. So it's a really cool book. All right. More so than that, I met Dundee and Burt Sugar, and I got both of their autographs on the front cover of the book. So not only is it a really cool book and a really cool read, but you got two guys that are no longer on this planet, okay, who autographed this book. I don't know how many people have an Angelo Dundee autograph or a Burt Sugar autograph, so that's kind of cool. Cool. That's a piece of it. You and I were talking before we came on the air today all about the U.S. Open, which is happening at Shinnecock this year. And in honor of the month of June, which is going to be starting here in a few days, and the U.S. Open, which happens on Father's Day weekend. I'm talking about the U.S. Open golf tournament, not the tennis one. It happens in August. The U.S. Open golf tournament, the third of the three majors, which is at Shinnecock in Southampton area, okay, in a little town called Shinnecock in Southampton on Long Island. And so in honor of that, Anthony, you're a big hat connoisseur. You always come wearing your hat. Couple of cool hats, brand new, a Cleveland golf hat. All right, really, really nice. All right, with the Cleveland logo on the back, fully adjustable. And if you're not a Cleveland guy, how about Titleist? All right, we'll give you a nice Titleist. This one's cool. It's got the mesh back with the solid front. It says Pro V1 on one side. That's the greatest ball in golf. Right, FootJoy, the logo for them on the front, and then on the other side, and then the Titleist logo on the back, also fully adjustable. Brand new, never worn. All right, out of my collection, so to speak.
Good looking hat.
That are going out the door as well. And then I got to get one of these out to you, right? I haven't sent you anything yet. I have to send you some things, don't I? I haven't sent you anything.
You can definitely send me some
things.
This
is pretty cool. This is a 12th Man-Child, which is our little VIP club, laser engraved pint glass, both sides. All right. When you put a beer in there, it really lights up the logo a little bit. Very, very cool. You see me wearing my 12th Man-Child.
Yeah, I like the logo. It's very we've talked about this before. I'm a sucker for a good logo. We've talked about the Northeast Roofing Professionals logo so much. The 12th Man-Child logo is a good one. I like I like just how symmetrical everything is. The 12th above the MC, and then the circular nature that brings it all in, and it looks really good on that glass. I'm a big sucker for, like, throughout sports in general, a good team logo or like field aesthetics, end zone logos, designs, things like that, branded logos. And the 12 man-child logo, love that, like, in general, but it looks really good on the glass.
I like that when it pops. Like, you see me, I sip out of my glass every day. It's a double-sided glass that we sell in our shop, right? So one side is our logo. And our logo's, it's got a lot in there, it's just got a lot. It's got a lot of words. It's got a lot of background, right? It's kind of busy. Then you flip to the other side, and that logo just really pops because it's simpler. Sometimes the simpler is the better, right? So that's the same logo you see in our
color scheme is good. Yeah, it's symmetrical and it's in the spherical nature of it. Yeah, it's a good logo. I like it.
All right. So for anybody interested, again, we promote this heavily during our live shows, and we'll have another live show later this morning. You can get in our raffle by becoming a member to our channel, gifting memberships. You can also do super chats and super stickers. And if you join at higher levels of our membership, because we have 3 levels, you'll get additional raffle tickets. So we'll talk all about it on the live show, but pretty cool prize. I thought you would appreciate those boxing things. I know you kind of, there's some things where you're kind of old school, which I love. I love when some of my younger guests still, dare I say, look to the past a little, don't just go, that's old people stuff. Who cares about that stuff? Muhammad Ali was a pretty significant figure in the history of sports, not even just the history of boxing, but the history of sports. You certainly should know a little bit about Muhammad Ali and what he meant to a sport that, when he was in it, by the way, was one of the top 3 sports in the country.
I was going to say, he was boxing. And that also, it's part of why I know, like, the history of boxing, because, again, even in the 90s, like, boxing still mattered, but boxing was like the thing. And it's not even kind of, it's fallen off a bunch. I know some of that is tied to, like, MMA and how, like, they've eaten into that, kind of niche market or whatever. But yeah, at that time, Ali and Liston and guys like Sugar Ray Leonard and George Foreman and other guys you name, there's countless, like, others. Boxing
can't miss events.
Yes, those were, pay-per-view is a thing because of boxing.
Because of that.
Like, live events and shows were because of boxing. Like, that was the sport across everything. And then Ali being arguably probably the greatest fighter of all time. And then you even tie in the whole, like, Cassius Clay aspect and the conversion and what he meant as, like, a cultural figure, let alone a boxer. And then, the flash and pizzazz he brought, and the talking and the arrogance, like, I also grew up on that too. Like, how many I remember seeing in the 90s too, regardless of the sport, basketball, football, but you'd see guys who talked a little bit and they weren't boxers, but it was like, oh, we noticed you talk a little bit. And they'd be like, yeah, I grew up on Muhammad Ali, or my dad knew Muhammad Ali. And, he brought that, he changed the way, like, athletes kind of operated. At that time, it was the biggest stars in sports were, like, usually baseball players, and they were all, kind of, Ted Williamses of the world, and the guys who were more quiet and reserved and kept to themselves. And here came Ali, flash, but he had substance to him, and he was phenomenal, but he also let you know that he was phenomenal. And yeah, man, it's a cool rabbit hole to go down.
It is. And there was a time in this world, Anthony, where boxing, baseball, and horse racing were the top 3 sports in America.
Oh, horse racing. That makes sense. I did not know. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a fair point.
I lived through a good piece of that. So, that's the truth of it. Now, that has changed drastically. And obviously, the thing that we spend most of our time talking about, football, has ascended to that number 1 spot. And we don't see it ever falling. But, again, those have fallen. You just never know.
Could you imagine telling somebody, like, in those times, like, hey, 40, 50 years from now, baseball is going to take a big step down. Boxing is going to take a big step down, and football is going to be the thing that carries everybody. And I can imagine people at that time being like,
lost.
What? Yeah, exactly. What? No way. Or even like,
no chance. No.
Yeah,
I know. It's
no
crazy.
chance.
The world changes. And chances are, as much as we look at it every day and say, football, it's king. There's no chance. You never know what else, is to come here and how the sports landscape will change. But football's here to stay for the moment, and we certainly cover it in a way that is justifiable for it being number 1 in the country. Anthony Prohaska, always good to talk football, hockey, boxing, horse racing, basketball, you name it. We do it all on our little Thursday segment. So thanks again, my friend. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy the weekend.